Updated saved memory. The group was on the run, aiming to escape through the Harbinger to reach the Ebon Hawk, but the station's layout blocked their path. As they made their way through the warship, they encountered Scion. Kreia decided to confront him, holding him off while Atten and Mitra made their escape. She tried to catch him off guard from the shadows, but Scion's senses were too sharp. In a flash, he spun around and severed her left hand. Despite this, Kreia managed to get away and they all reached the Ebon Hawk, leaving Paragus behind. But Scion wasn't done yet. He followed them, firing at their ship, only to miss and hit the fuel-rich asteroids instead. The resulting explosion wiped out Paragus 2 in an instant. As expected, Scion survived the blast and continued his pursuit. Meanwhile, Surik and her companions were hunting down the last surviving members of the Jedi Council. Unfortunately for them, Scion's assassins were quicker, capturing Master Vash on Korriban and imprisoning her in the ruins of the Sith Academy. All to lure Surik to the planet. He wouldn't let her pass, determined to protect Traya from the darkness that threatened to break her. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't overcome the exile. Surik, however, had the strength to erode Scion's resolve. She showed him the futility of his struggle, revealing the reason for her victory. Surik had learned to live without the Force, while Scion had become so dependent on it that he couldn't even survive without it. But despite his obsession with eradicating the Jedi, Scion found himself living a hollow existence, enduring endless pain with nothing to fight for. Surik's words rang true, and in that moment, Scion realized that death wasn't as terrifying as he thought. He finally let go, allowing himself to die. In Knights of the Old Republic 2, Darth Scion's story serves as a poignant reminder that the extreme powers granted by the Force are ultimately weaknesses, not strengths. Like Darth Nihilus, Scion embodies the dark side's ultimate futility, the Sith's endless pursuit of immortality, a fruitless trap that leads only to suffering. Updated, saved memory. When Tulak Hord ascended as the Dark Lord, he wasted no time in eliminating anyone he saw as a threat, starting with the powerful Lord Kali. The only one spared was Kemval, who stuck by his side. With his enemies out of the way, Hord's reign as the Dark Lord skyrocketed, leading the Sith Empire on an unprecedented wave of conquest. His power was unmatched, his skill with a lightsaber was legendary, even said to be the greatest of all time, and no warrior could withstand him. While some later Sith claimed he killed 1,000 Jedi, that number's credibility is debatable, since the Jedi hadn't even learned of the Sith Empire yet. What was beyond question, though, was his mastery of Sith alchemy. Hord didn't settle for the typical alchemically enhanced sword. He crafted a terrifying black mask that not only protected him in battle, but also made him harder to detect through the Force. As a warrior, he was peerless, but as an emperor, he was relentless, crushing rebellions and expanding the Empire to over 100 newly conquered worlds. Tulak Hord wasn't just the most powerful Sith, he was its greatest conqueror. Scion's life was a paradox. He had immortality, but no reason to live forever. Despite the boundless power, he realized it was all hollow. Immortality became pointless when there was nothing to live for, and so, in a rare moment of clarity, Scion chose to die. The dark side is all about striving for more power, more control, but in the end, that power is empty if you've lost sight of what truly mattered. Many Sith Lords climbed to the peak of their power, but by the time they got there, they had nothing left, consumed by selfish desires. Over the years, the galaxy was terrorized by countless Sith, like Darth Sidious, Darth Plagueis, and Darth Bane, with a few notable names like Darth Revan, Darth Nihilus, and Darth Scion. But what if there was one even greater than them? Enter Tulak Hord, a name you might not recognize, but trust us, he's one of the greatest Sith Lords of all time. A ruler of the first Sith Empire, an undefeated conqueror, and a master duelist, Tulak Hord stood out in an era brimming with powerful Sith. Back then, the Sith weren't just a cult, they were an empire, a species, and a culture. This is the untold story of a true Dark Lord. The Sith Empire, born from chaos, grew larger, wealthier, and stronger over the centuries, but it was forever plagued by infighting. Sith Lords turned their schemes inward more than outward as ambitious apprentices formed alliances to overthrow their masters, weakening the Empire's core. This cycle of power struggles and fleeting stability was a constant. In the midst of this turmoil, Tulak Hord was born. While his exact timeline remains uncertain, it is believed he rose to prominence around 6000 BBY. A Sith pureblood, Horde's connection to the dark side was undeniable, and he was quickly taken under the wing of the Sith Lords for training. It was a time of great advancement in lightsaber combat, with Sith masters outshining their Jedi counterparts. Horde wasted no time proving himself, becoming a master of the blade, surpassing even seasoned rivals and mentors. His unmatched skill and power allowed him to rise swiftly, claiming his title as a Sith Lord. Early in his rise, he defeated the Jade Kem Val in a lightsaber duel, and as tradition dictated, Kem pledged his loyalty to the victor, solidifying Horde's place in the Empire's brutal hierarchy. In the centuries following the founding of the Sith Empire, its expansion was constant, growing in wealth and strength, but it was always plagued by a deadly curse infighting. Sith Lords were often more focused on scheming against each other than battling their enemies, and apprentices frequently joined forces to overthrow their masters, weakening the Empire. During this time of chaos, Tulak Horde emerged. Though the exact date of his rise remains uncertain, it is believed to be around 6000 BBY. Born a Sith pureblood, Horde was immersed in the dark side from a young age, mastering the art of lightsaber combat at a time when the Sith were advancing their skills beyond the Jedi. His unmatched power and skill soon set him apart, surpassing his rivals and even most of his mentors. Horde's quick rise culminated in his becoming a Sith Lord, and he would go on to defeat a powerful Dashade named Kem Val in a lightsaber duel, with the creature pledging its loyalty to him in the aftermath. Lord Horde and his loyal ally Val assembled a formidable army, setting it in motion to crush rebellions on the distant Sith worlds of Yen and Chabosh. On Yen, Horde single-handedly shattered the siege of a Sith citadel before leading his forces into battle on Chabosh, leaving behind a bloody path. This was just the beginning of his relentless campaigns. During one of these battles, Horde encountered Aloysius Kallik, a pureblood with ambitions to join the ranks of the Sith Lords. Initially dismissing him, Horde's stance quickly shifted when Kallik defeated his best general in a duel, proving his strength. Recognizing Kallik's potential, Horde took him in as a protege, granting him command of one of his armies. Under Kallik's leadership, Horde's forces triumphed in numerous victories, bolstering Horde's reputation as he continued his crusade against rebellious worlds. Throughout his campaigns, Horde harnessed ancient Sith rituals, draining the life force of his enemies to bolster his own, solidifying his dominance. With each victory, he amassed new titles, earning the names Lord of Hate and Master of the Gathering Darkness, until he ultimately claimed the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. Updated saved memory Tulak Horde's rise as Dark Lord began with a ruthless purge, eliminating anyone he saw as a rival, starting with Lord Kallik, whom he marked for death first. The only survivor of his wrath was Kem Val, who became his loyal companion. With his power secured, Horde expanded the Sith Empire's influence, launching devastating campaigns against rebellious planets and newly discovered systems. He quickly became the most feared Sith Lord in history, renowned not only as the greatest duelist of his time, but possibly the greatest the Sith had ever known. Warriors and Jedi alike trembled at the mention of his name. Legends say he slew 1,000 Jedi, though it's doubtful, since the Jedi were unaware of the Sith Empire's existence then. Horde also mastered Sith alchemy, using it to both enhance his abilities and create powerful, dark artifacts. Unlike most Dark Lords, who favored alchemically enhanced swords, Horde crafted a terrifying black mask worn during battles, shielding him from the heat of combat and making him nearly invisible to the Force. But his talents weren't just limited to the battlefield. He was also a conqueror without equal, crushing rebellions on Sith worlds and adding over 100 new planets to the Empire during his reign. Tulak Horde, one of the most powerful Sith Lords, discovered many worlds during his reign, including Dromun Khas, which would later become the capital of the Sith Empire. However, no matter how strong he was in the Force, there was one challenge he could never conquer: the Stygian Caldera. Despite his ability to rip entire cruisers from the sky, the nebula was beyond his reach, and Sith warships were powerless to navigate through it. A master of nearly every discipline, Horde was a sought-after mentor, though he refused nearly all would-be apprentices, believing only the strongest deserved his teachings. His knowledge was so vast that he filled countless books in a holocron with his dark secrets, hiding them in the most dangerous places, hoping only the greatest Sith would find them. But there was one exception, Orton Sella, a man who eventually became Horde's apprentice. Under his guidance, Sella learned much, but like all Sith, his ambition soon outgrew his master. One day, in a brutal act of betrayal, Sella killed Horde, denying him the honor of a final confrontation. Thinking he had surpassed his master, Sella sought to claim the title of Dark Lord of the Sith, but in the end, he faded into obscurity, overshadowed by more worthy Sith. Horde's legacy lived on, however, as his followers entombed him in the Valley of the Dark Lords. Along with his mask, holocron, and the vast knowledge he had collected protected by deadly traps, awaiting the arrival of a true Sith to claim it. Once a king among kings, a Sith Lord of unmatched power, Tulak Horde's name was spoken with reverence during the height of the Sith Empire. But as empires fell and centuries passed, his legacy crumbled into obscurity. His tomb, once a symbol of his might, was looted and forgotten, leaving only ruins behind. The teachings he left behind faded, and the story of Tulak Horde was known only to the few who still walked the dark path. Time buried his name beneath the sands of the Sith worlds, a forgotten legend. Meanwhile, Darth Nihilus, a figure known to most for his terrifying power to wipe out entire planets with the Force, was thought to be an unstoppable god. But that perception was a lie. Beneath the surface of his overwhelming strength lay a tragic tale. While he couldn't match or even surpass the likes of Darth Sidious, the truth of his being was far more complex. The story begins above Malachor V, a remote planet once part of the original Sith Empire, home to the infamous Traius Academy. After the fall of the Sith Empire, the planet was abandoned, but the dark energies of the Academy remained, soaking into the world. When the Mandalorian Wars came to an end, Revan chose Malachor V as the final battlefield, a decision that would set in motion the tragic events that would see a broken Jedi exile face the fearsome Darth Nihilus. Revan and his generals, along with Jedi Crusaders, plotted to trap Mandalore the Ultimate and his fleet above Malachor to end the war. The plan was simple. Surik would bait the Mandalorians with a small fleet, while Revan and Malak would ambush them. But delays hit Revan's fleet, leaving Surik's forces overwhelmed. When Revan finally arrived, the Mandalorians were cornered, and he killed Mandalore in one-on-one combat. But Surik's fleet had suffered heavily, and to survive, she activated a super weapon, the Mass Shadow Generator, designed to wipe out the Mandalorian fleet. It backfired though, tearing through both fleets and Malachor itself. The planet fractured, pulling ships into its depths and killing millions in an instant, sending a shockwave across the galaxy, leaving a wound in the Force that could be felt by all Force-sensitive beings. Meetra Surik, a Jedi general, was forced to sever herself from the Force to survive, leading to her exile from the Jedi Order. This act turned Malachor V into a massive wound in the Force, a scar created by an event so horrific that it left a permanent mark on the very fabric of the Force. These kinds of wounds, caused by atrocities like the destruction of planets, reverberate through the Force, with Force-sensitive individuals able to hear the echoes of the dead. This is how Obi-Wan sensed the destruction of Alderaan. Normally, these wounds heal on their own, but Malachor's was too much. The destruction from the final battle of the Mandalorian Wars was so intense that the wound couldn't close by itself. Worse still, the power of the Traius Academy, which survived the catastrophic Mass Shadow Generator, amplified this scar. The screams from Malachor echoed across the stars, deepening existing wounds in the Force and influencing living creatures, turning beasts more vicious and sentients more cruel. As the Jedi Civil War and Dark Wars spread their own scars, the effects compounded, with Meetra Surik at the center, which is why she had to cut herself off from the Force entirely. In the aftermath of the devastating battle on Malachor V, Darth Nihilus emerged from the chaos, his past lost to time and irrelevant to his transformation. A walking wound in the Force, he was forever marked by the darkness of that place. Learning an ancient Sith technique, he gained the horrifying ability to drain the life force of others, growing stronger with each victim. This power, however, came with a curse. Nihilus was bound to feed or risk being consumed by an unquenchable hunger. His insatiable appetite was linked directly to the echoes of Malachor's wound in the Force, and as he devoured more lives, those echoes only grew louder, amplifying his power. Over time, his strength became terrifying. During the Jedi Civil War, Nihilus gained the ability to consume entire planets, his power swelling even further when he, alongside Darth Sion, became the apprentice of Darth Traya. The Republic may have won the war, but their victory was hollow, as the Jedi faced near extinction. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Sith regrouped at the Trayus Academy, readying themselves for vengeance. In the depths of the galaxy, Nihilus harnessed the Force to rip the fallen Republic cruiser, the Ravager, from the blackened crust of Malachor. This moment marked the birth of a fleet of ghost ships, held together by Nihilus' sheer will. With his new fleet, he embarked on a relentless crusade, hunting down Jedi across the stars. The first Jedi Purge was upon them. Wherever Jedi gathered, the Ravager was sure to follow, and Nihilus would consume every living thing, the Jedi, their allies, and anyone unfortunate enough to be in the way. The Jedi Order dwindled fast, and when Nihilus devoured what was thought to be the last of them on the Mira Luca colony of Qatar, the Order was shattered. Yet, on Qatar, Nihilus spared one Visas Mar, a Mira Luca Force adept, whom he claimed as his assassin. Unlike the others, he didn't devour her, but instead turned her into his weapon, binding her to his cause. Nihilus' power grew to godlike proportions, and his belief was clear. All life must die, for he alone brought order to the chaos and silence to the noise of existence. With his mission nearing its end, he and Sion turned on Darth Traya, severing her connection to the Force and leaving her to die. After parting ways, neither of them knew that Traya had survived. She sought out the exile, Mitra Surik, the last believed Jedi, who had been wandering the galaxy for years in self-imposed isolation since the fall of Malachor. Under Traya's new identity as Kreia, Surik found her way back to the galaxy's core, slowly reconnecting with the Force. But Nihilus, sensing her return, sent his servant Visas to eliminate Surik. However, Visas chose to ally with the exile instead. Surik and her companions traveled the galaxy, seeking out Jedi and thwarting Sith schemes. When Nihilus' followers tried to overthrow Onderon, the exile turned the tide of battle, striking a blow to the Sith Lord. But Nihilus, now so consumed by his hunger, could only be satisfied by devouring entire planets, and Onderon was his next target. Kreia, knowing this, deceived Nihilus into thinking there was a Jedi Academy on Telos 4, knowing full well he would be drawn to it. But it was a trap. With Surik waiting, she, Visas, and Mandalore, the Preserver's warriors, boarded the Ravager and confronted Nihilus on his assault of Telos. Surik revealed how Kreia had deceived the Sith Lord and offered herself to him, but when Nihilus tried to feed on the Jedi exile, all he found was the Force wound she carried. Weakened, Nihilus was swiftly defeated by Surik, who then destroyed Malachor 5, healing the Force wound forever. For those who haven't played Knights of the Old Republic 2, it might seem strange that a Jedi exile, only recently reconnecting with the Force, could defeat such a powerful being. The answer lies in the game's core theme, Kreia's philosophy, which questioned the true nature of strength in the Force. Nihilus, powerful beyond measure, relied entirely on the Force, but Surik had learned to live without it, making her the stronger of the two. The power Darth Nihilus wielded was never truly his to command. He was a parasite, constantly feeding off others, and in doing so only drained himself further. His hunger controlled him, and when he couldn't satisfy it, he began to consume himself. Always on the hunt, he was trapped in a cycle of insatiable need. Visas Mar once told Mitra Surik that Nihilus' power had grown so vast he had ceased to be human. He had become a force unto himself, more concerned with entire planets than with any individual. But that wasn't strength, it was a sign of his weakness. Nihilus had become so dependent on the Force that the power itself was all that remained of him, and even that wasn't his. It was merely the lingering echo of a past event. After his death, Visas uncovered the truth. Beneath the mask, Nihilus was nothing more than a man, powerless and irrelevant. He had become so consumed by his own power that he might as well have ceased to exist. In contrast, Mitra Surik was free, having cast off the Force entirely. Even when she began to regain her abilities, the strength of her choice to break free remained with her. The Mana's Bake Force no longer controlled her. Thus, she was able to not only kill Nihilus, but do so with relative ease. Darth Nihilus was one of the most powerful Sith Lords of all time, But ultimately, that power meant nothing. Visa's Mar was a Miraluka, a member of a rare, near-human species. The Miraluka had no eyes, and thus, by human standards, were naturally blind. Despite their lack of eyesight, however, the Miraluka could still see. They saw through the Force, perceiving the currents and patterns of life, and using that sense to navigate. As you might expect, the Miraluka were naturally Force sensitive, and Visa's, in particular, was quite strong in the Force. Visa's lived on Qatar, a beautiful Miraluka colony world in the mid-rim. It was a somewhat obscure planet, as the Miraluka were rather reclusive, but it wasn't completely cut off from the outside galaxy. In particular, Qatar kept close ties with the Jedi Order, as the Miraluka had an easier time connecting with beings who could also see the universe through the Force. This close bond led the Jedi to choose Qatar as the site of a conclave in 3952 BBY. 4 years after the Jedi Civil War, the Jedi Order was hanging by a thread, decimated by the Sith. As the years passed, their numbers continued to dwindle, and a strange new threat began to prey on them. Jedi were being attacked through the Force itself, unable to identify the source, only suspecting some dark breed of Sith. In a desperate attempt to uncover the truth, the surviving Jedi gathered on the remote planet Qatar, hoping that the proximity to the Force-sensitive Miraluka might help reveal the nature of their enemy. But their efforts had unintended consequences. By coming together on Qatar, they unknowingly drew the attention of Darth Nihilus, a Sith Lord with a terrifying hunger. Visa's Mar, one of the few to survive, later spoke of the horrors she experienced. The Jedi never saw his face, but his voice echoed through the planet, and with it, Qatar died. Nihilus drained the Force from every living being on the planet, destroying not only the Jedi, but also the Miraluka and every other life form, from sentient beings to the smallest microbes. The only survivor was Visa's Mar. However, the fate that befell her was worse than death. As a Miraluka, she had always seen through the Force, but after Nihilus's attack, she was left blind. Forever lost in the void, Visa searched the Force, scanning for disturbances and Jedi for Nihilus to feed on. When she found one, Nihilus would send her to capture it. Trained in the ways of the lightsaber and powerful Force techniques, Visa's was a deadly weapon. No one survived her encounters until one day when everything changed. A year after the destruction of Qatar, Visa's sensed a new disturbance in the Force, a wound that felt eerily familiar. Nihilus ordered her to track it down, and she obeyed, driven by loyalty and curiosity. She soon discovered that the source was Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, who had returned to known space after years in exile. Visa's infiltrated Surik's ship, the Ebon Hawk, and confronted the exile after her return from Nar Shaddaa. Their duel was brief but fierce, and Surik emerged victorious. Visa's was left wounded, her lightsaber shattered. She begged Surik to end her life, but the exile refused. Visa's searched the Force, hunting for Jedi to feed Nihilus's hunger. Trained in the ways of the lightsaber and dark Force techniques, she became a deadly hunter, leaving no survivor in her wake until a new disturbance in the Force caught her attention. A year after the fall of Qatar, Visa sensed an echo, a painful wound similar to her own. Nihilus commanded her to track it down, and she obeyed, driven by loyalty and a growing curiosity. The source was Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, who had returned to the Republic after years in isolation. Visa stowed away on the Ebon Hawk, confronting Surik after her return from Nar Shaddaa. The two clashed in a fierce lightsaber duel, but Surik emerged victorious. Wounded and defeated, Visa's begged Surik to end her life, but the exile refused. Visa slipped into unconsciousness, her fate uncertain. Thanks to the care of the Ebon Hawk's crew, she eventually awoke, her body battered but alive. In gratitude for sparing her, she pledged her loyalty to the exile, offering her services. Surik, showing unexpected mercy, accepted Visa's without hesitation, forgiving the earlier attack. This act of kindness took Visa's by surprise, a reminder of the compassion she had long forgotten. Swearing to protect the exile, Visas also warned her of the inevitable confrontation with Nihilus. She feared for Surik's safety, cautioning that Nihilus was no ordinary foe. He had become a creature of pure, unrelenting power. The crew aboard the Ebonhawk, though uneasy about having a former Sith assassin among them, found Krea's counsel reassuring. She saw in Visas an opportunity, sensing a link between the young woman and Nihilus. Krea urged Surik to use this connection, advising her to manipulate Visas into sacrificing herself when the time came, believing it could be the key to defeating the Lord of Hunger. Surik turned down the idea of vengeance and instead chose to guide Visas and her companions in the Jedi path. As they journeyed across the galaxy, Visas, once a Sith, began shedding the dark teachings of her former master, replacing them with the ways of the Jedi Sentinel. Surik repaired her lightsaber and returned it to her, and Visas quickly became an invaluable ally to the team. With every passing day, Surik grew stronger, and Visas began to believe that the exile could truly face down Darth Nihilus. Still, she couldn't shake the fear that Surik might not be able to overcome her past, dreading the scars such a confrontation would leave. Yet, amid this worry, Visas found peace in Surik's presence. As their bond deepened, Visas' foresight returned, allowing her to see the true nature of Surik, wounded but deeply connected to the life around her. In Surik, Visas saw the proof that Nihilus had been wrong about the universe. She realized that she was not alone in her suffering, and this revelation sparked a new sense of hope within her. As they supported each other through their shared pain, both began to heal in ways neither could have anticipated. With Surik's support, Visas began to heal from the torment she had carried since the destruction of Qatar. As fate would have it, the moment came for Surik to face the Lord of Hunger himself. When Nihilus descended on Telos 4 with the intent to wipe it from existence, Surik and the Ebonhawk crew hurried to the planet's defense. While the Republic Navy kept the Ravager and its fleet at bay, Surik, Visas, and a squad of Mandalorians boarded the Sith Lord's flagship, determined to plant bombs throughout the ship, take down Nihilus, and send it all to oblivion. As they ventured deeper into the Ravager, the group stumbled upon Visas' old meditation chamber. Seizing the moment, Visas used it to reconnect with the voices of Qatar one final time. It was here, with Surik's help, that Visas released the grief she had long held, finally coming to peace with the loss of her world. Whole again, Visas led Surik and Mandalore to the bridge, where Nihilus awaited, furious at the betrayal. But Surik, ever the strategist, offered herself in place of Visas, tempting Nihilus to feed on her instead. As he tried to consume her, he recoiled in shock, struck by the wound in the force within Surik. With Nihilus stunned, Surik, Visas, and Mandalore seized the moment to strike back. Dromund Kaas, a place where freedom meets its end and legends are thrust upon the galaxy. Here, the Sith Empire is torn apart by constant infighting, with Sith Lords undermining each other in petty squabbles. These conflicts often fracture entire armies, pitting master against apprentice, and offering the Republic and the Jedi much-needed moments to regroup and fight back. But there was one Sith who rose above the chaos. He saw past the politics, seeking to spread the dark side to the galaxy's masses. This is the story of Darth Jadis, the Sith who wanted to democratize fear. Little is known about him. He was a human male, likely born on Dromund Kaas, and a powerful Sith Lord, second only to Emperor Vitiate, who called him the best Sith his empire ever produced. Despite his power, Jadis was a secretive figure, always hiding his face, as per the Sith tradition. He first earned recognition during the Great Galactic War and later joined the Sith Dark Council during the Cold War. As a member of the Council, he controlled the sphere of intelligence, overseeing an extensive network of spies and saboteurs. What made him different from the other Sith was his choice to promote non-Force users as agents, earning the ire of his peers. He followed the Sith mask tradition strictly, never revealing his true identity. And unlike most Sith, he resisted the usual rush of rage and passion, keeping the emotions that powered the dark side buried deep within. In the depths of Dromund Kaas, where freedom is crushed and legends are forced upon the galaxy, the Sith Empire's constant infighting weakens its power. Sith Lords tear each other down, splitting armies and even turning master against apprentice, giving the Republic and Jedi opportunities to strike back. But one Sith, Darth Jadis, had a different vision. He wanted to bring fear to the masses, not through petty politics, but through sheer power. Known only as a mysterious, secretive figure, Jadis rose to prominence as the second most powerful Sith, praised by the Emperor himself. As the head of the Sphere of Intelligence, he ran an elite network of spies and saboteurs, promoting non-Force users over Sith, much to his peers' frustration. Never once revealing his face, Jadis was a master of subtlety and calculation, hiding his emotions while aiming to reshape the Empire. He was a mastermind, cool and calculating, dedicating his genius to building a formidable network of spies and agents. The petty squabbles of his Sith peers didn't concern him. They were mere hurdles that the Empire had to overcome on its path to ultimate glory. To truly grasp his character, one must first understand the Empire he served. After the crushing defeat in the Great Hyperspace War, the remnants of Naga Sadow's failed campaign against the Galactic Republic were left desperate. They made wild hyperspace jumps, seeking new worlds to escape the extinction of their kind. Amidst this chaos, a Sith Lord named Vitiate commanded his researchers to search for the lost Sith colony world, Dromund Kaas, a world lost during the war. The survivors eventually found it, and they rebuilt the Sith Empire, which became known as the reconstituted Sith Empire, or the true Sith Empire. Dromund Kaas, a dark and foreboding world, became their new home. It was the third planet in the Dromund system, located in the Outer Rim's Estran sector. Once covered in vast jungles and oceans, it now stood as a symbol of Sith resurrection. Its location had been forgotten, but Sith Emperor Vitiate rediscovered it in 4980 BBY, and Kaas City was established as the Empire's new capital. For the next 1,000 years, the planet's landscape was gradually transformed, with jungles giving way to sprawling cities crowned by towering skyscrapers. The Sith Empire was dominated by the Dark Council, a secretive group of 12 Sith Lords, each holding immense power and answering only to the Sith Emperor. Being part of the council meant you were among the mightiest in the Empire, and when a member fell, their apprentice was next in line. In the era of the Sith Empire's reconstitution, the Dark Council controlled everything, managing the day-to-day operation. Darth Jadis, one of its most formidable members, ruled over Imperial intelligence, one of the 12 influential spheres. But Jadis despised the politics and infighting of the Council. He dreamed of overthrowing them, uniting the Empire, and spreading the Sith teachings to the masses. His vision? A galaxy where ordinary citizens could harness the power of fear and anger. With vast knowledge of the dark side, Jadis was a force to be reckoned with, skilled in all the classic Sith powers, including Force Choke, Lightning, and Corruption. His mind tricks were deadly, and even the strongest could not stand against him. Oh, and did I mention? He could teleport too! He possessed the rare and deadly ability of Force Healing, a gift that allowed him to mend his own wounds, much like a forgotten legend. Armed with a single-bladed red lightsaber, his mere presence could send shockwaves of pain through anyone nearby, a testament to the dark side energy that emanated from him. Darth Jadis, a cold and calculating figure on the Sith Dark Council, was known for his brilliance and unwavering control. Unlike many of his peers, he didn't let rage or passion cloud his judgment. Instead, he harnessed the dark side, using it to fuel his ever-growing power. Mysteriously meritocratic, he recruited agents based on their skills, not their heritage, defying the xenophobic norms of the Empire by welcoming aliens into his fold. To him, the Council's power struggles were petty distractions, holding the Empire back from achieving its true potential. This aloofness made his fellow Council members uneasy but solidified the loyalty of his followers. Even more enigmatic was his daughter, who would eventually become his only apprentice. In 3643 BBY, as the Sith Empire battled against rising rebels and terrorist factions, Jadis was tasked with investigating the Eagle's network. When the terrorists struck, bombing his flagship, the Dominator, and launching an attack on Kaas City, Jadis was presumed dead along with thousands of others. But the true story of his fate would rest in the hands of a mysterious agent known only as Cypher 9, later called Night Shrike. In a galaxy where Sith are often seen as nothing more than villains obsessed with ridiculous schemes, Darth Malgus stands out as one of the most formidable and epic figures to ever walk the dark path. Unlike the usual caricatures of evil, he was a Sith with a purpose, driven by a clear ideology and an unwavering determination to see his vision of the galaxy realized. Malgus was born Veradun on the stormy world of Dromund Kaas in 3700 BBY, and from the start, he proved to be no ordinary Sith. His cold, calculating nature made him a force to be reckoned with, and his belief in his cause was so strong that many saw him as someone worth following. Whether it was through alliances with other powerful figures or through his brutal, no-nonsense approach, Malgus was always at the heart of the action. Even when others might crumble under the weight of their own power, he stood firm, making him not just another Sith, but one who would change the galaxy forever. In the complex galaxy of the Old Republic, paths to power often involve tricky alliances and dangerous betrayals. One such path sees a character aligning with Jadis, biding time until he's distracted and captured by the Dark Council, while another path leads Cypher 9 into Jadis' inner circle, taking up arms and earning the notorious title Hand of Jadis. The Sith are a varied bunch, from Lords of Pain to planet-devouring threats, with many needing to just take a step back and relax. But none have left a mark quite like Darth Malgus. Unlike the typical Sith, who are often portrayed as one-dimensional villains obsessed with chaos, Malgus stood out. He wasn't just a power-hungry force of destruction. He had a purpose, an ideology that guided his every action. This wasn't just a man of rage, but a man of vision. And it was that vision that inspired others to follow him. Darth Malgus wasn't just another Sith. He was a formidable force, willing to sacrifice everything to see his beliefs come to life. Born as Veradun on the storm-racked planet of Dromund Kaas in 3700 BBY, his journey to becoming one of the most legendary Sith in history was inevitable. Longtime fans of the series on Sith history will recognize the time period we're diving into. After the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil War, peace settled over the galaxy. With Revan's disappearance, the Republic believed the Sith were gone for good, but they were wrong. A Sith Lord named Vitiate, with a devoted group of followers, went into hiding, wandering the galaxy until they eventually found a home on the forgotten world of Dromund Kaas. There, Vitiate became the Dark Lord of the Sith and slowly rebuilt his forces. Enter Veradun, raised by a scientist in the Imperial Science Bureau, who grew up with a passion for zoology and a deep understanding of the Force, deception, and personal conduct. Trained from a young age with a strong moral compass, Veradun, later known as Malgus, trained at the Sith Academy before becoming an apprentice to Darth Vindicant. His path took a turn on Geonosis when he witnessed a Twi'lek slave being mistreated by her owner, whom he killed in cold blood. Taking the Twi'lek as his own, he defied the conventions of the Sith and treated her with respect, even though she remained his slave. He had dedicated his life to safeguarding the Empire and its people, ensuring its future and growth. To him, war was just a tool, a necessary means for evolution. He believed the Empire had stagnated, shackled by petty infighting for too long. No more. To strengthen and evolve, the Empire needed to change. As the Empire's ruler, he did everything he could to halt the political chaos, striving for a fragile stability. Yet, despite his disciplined approach, he was no soft heart. A ruthless Sith through and through. He wasn't above using his power to crush anyone who posed a threat. But unlike others, like his colleague Ravage, he wasn't quick to explode in rage. No, he was controlled, his anger simmering beneath the surface, unleashed only when absolutely necessary. After the battle on Korriban, Malgus became convinced he was the one destined to bring down both the Republic and the Jedi. The Sith, having gained a victory, began expanding their reach, conquering large portions of the galaxy and pushing toward the core worlds. By 3667, Malgus had risen to the rank of Darth, celebrated for his raw power and tactical brilliance. It was these very qualities that saw him chosen to lead the Sith invasion of Alderaan. Using a clever ruse, Malgus lured Republic forces away with an Imperial fleet attack, then bombarded Alderaan from orbit. He landed troops, droids, and Sith on the planet's surface, leading a brutal rampage through the cities and forests. However, things took an unexpected turn when a group of Republic Spec Ops, including Jace Malcolm, remained on the planet. They launched a guerrilla assault, causing havoc for Malgus and his forces. In the heat of battle, Jace Malcolm was almost defeated by the Sith, but a Jedi Knight, Saddle Shan, stepped in to save him. The confrontation between Jedi and Sith intensified, with both sides wielding lightsabers and the Force with deadly precision. In the end, Shan and Malcolm succeeded in defeating Malgus, throwing him off a cliff and ensuring that the falling rock sealed his fate. Presumed fallen, the Sith commander's forces crumbled as Republic reinforcements swept through, marking the loss of the battle. Yet he endured, grievously wounded, returning to war with a rebreather after his defeat. Undeterred, he led the Outer Rim campaign, though lack of support cost him key worlds, forcing retreats deep into Sith territory. Repelling a Republic push at Ashes re-earned him high praise and renewed promises from his superiors. And despite internal betrayal, he maintained control over a contested world against the will of its nobles. Tasked with reclaiming a lost stronghold to restore his honor, he executed a flawless assault, unleashing droids, soldiers, and elite commandos to swiftly bring the city under Sith control. For weeks, the battle raged as Jedi interference slowed the Sith. But in the end, Malgus emerged victorious, proving his skill and regaining the Empire's trust. His success earned him a spot on the new invasion force because the Sith were far from satisfied with just half the galaxy. The Great Galactic War had stretched on for nearly 30 years, and while the Sith were winning, they needed something more. To truly cripple the Republic, they needed a devastating blow that would force them into surrender. In 3653 BBY, the Sith reached out, offering peace talks on Alderaan, a diplomatic ruse to distract the Republic. As the talks unfolded, Darth Angral and Darth Malgus launched their true plan. Angral would attack Coruscant, while Malgus' target was the Jedi Temple. Fueled by his vow to eradicate the Jedi, Malgus entered the temple alone, a distraction for a team of Sith who would infiltrate and destroy the Republic's defense system. The stage was set for a game-changing strike. With Coruscant's defenses shattered, the stage was set for destruction. Malgus, a harbinger of chaos, descended upon the jewel of the Republic. The Jedi, ever vigilant, rushed to confront him, but their efforts were no match for his fury. Temple security stood little chance, swiftly falling before his power. As Jedi Knights gathered, including Zalo, a longtime rival, the battle raged. Yet, it was the arrival of Sith reinforcements that tilted the scales in Malgus' favor. The fight exploded into a frenzy, with Malgus, Zalo, Adros, and Daru locked in brutal combat. Despite the Sith's numbers, the Jedi stood strong, pushing Malgus to the brink of madness. When Zalo wounded his wife, Malgus' rage reached a boiling point. With unrelenting fury, he cut down Jedi after Jedi, tearing through their defenses until Zalo himself fell, his body left to burn in the wreckage of the temple. From the flames, Malgus looked on as the planet city burned, now firmly in the grasp of the Sith. With the fall of the Republic's capital into enemy hands, the Republic had no choice but to surrender. This led to the Treaty of Coruscant, a deal heavily tilted in favor of the Empire. Though peace settled between the two powers, the galaxy held its breath. And as for Malgus, he was waiting for the right moment. Despite his triumph, Malgus wasn't satisfied. Sure, he had relished the destruction of the Jedi Temple and watching the Republic burn. It was the dream he'd held onto for nearly 3 decades. But the victory didn't feel complete. His discontent stemmed from the Sith Empire's decision to accept a Republic surrender, leaving Malgus longing for more than a fragile peace. He wanted the obliteration of his enemies, not this uneasy truce. To make matters worse, Malgus struggled with the realization that his rivals, Darth Angral and his apprentice, had manipulated his wife during the attack on Coruscant. Malgus, a Sith through and through, harbored a secret. He was deeply in love with his wife. This love, however, clashed with everything he had been taught about the Sith way. It was a tricky spot. Along with the Sith teachings from the Academy, he also carried the wisdom of his father, who made Malgus see the flaws within the Empire itself. After the Treaty of Coruscant, the Cold War between the Republic and the Sith Empire simmered on for 2 decades, with Malgus serving the Dark Council. He led missions to destroy Hammer Station, find the Foundry, and even created a superweapon for the Council. But what truly set Malgus apart was his unconventional style. Unlike other Sith, he forged alliances with alien mercenaries, learning their languages and cultures. His dealings earned him favor from the Voss and the Chiss, who saw something different in him because, unlike most Sith, Malgus didn't buy into the idea that humans were superior. Malgus was no stranger to the harsh, unyielding beliefs of the Sith Empire. For as long as it had existed, the Sith had maintained one unwavering truth. Humans were the supreme species, and aliens were nothing more than tools to be used. But Malgus, ever the dissenter, began to see cracks in this foundation. As he grew in power, he couldn't ignore the destructive nature of the Sith's petty power struggles. The true enemy of the Empire, he realized, was not the Republic, but the Sith themselves, as they tore each other apart in their endless bid for control. Worse still, Malgus grew disillusioned with the Sith Emperor. While the Emperor had maintained his title through dark rituals, he had not been seen in ages, leaving the Empire's fate to the Dark Council. When a Jedi strike team managed to infiltrate the Citadel and supposedly end the Emperor's life during the Cold War, it was the final straw for Malgus. The Empire's leadership was weak, their actions misguided. And so, when Darth Arho of the Dark Council launched an invasion of Ilum, hoping to seize its valuable crystals, Malgus refused to fall in line. Instead of supporting his fellow Sith, he defied them, turning his allegiance to the Republic. Offering intelligence and ground support to the Republic's counter-offensive, Malgus took his first steps toward a new path, one that would leave the Sith Empire behind. After Arho was taken down, Malgus stepped up to claim his place on the Dark Council and took charge of the sphere of military offense. With his new role, he led missions to secure Adagan crystals, intending to power stealth generators for a fleet of ships. Though he pushed for change within the Empire, advocating for alien rights and reform, the conservative forces shut him down. But that was their mistake. Over time, Malgus gathered resources and built powerful alliances, particularly with alien races. Once his stealth armada was ready, he made his move, declaring himself Sith Emperor. This empire would be different. Malgus aimed to rid the Sith of their petty infighting, replacing it with a unified, stronger force. With his army of Sith rebels, a fleet of stealth ships, and a droid army rivaling even Revan's or Sen, he set out to conquer the galaxy. Unlike other Sith, he welcomed those who shared his vision, hoping to create an empire unlike any before it. His first target? The unknown regions, an area he'd explored for the Empire years earlier. Malgus's army scored a few early wins, but when the Sith Emperor bit the dust, many Sith saw Malgus as the natural heir to the throne. The problem? The Republic and the Sith Empire finally found a common enemy, and neither side wanted a rising Sith star like Malgus calling the shots. His first major loss came at Ilum, a total humiliation. Then, a daring strike team infiltrated his space station, fought their way through the defenses, and finally cornered him in his throne room. The battle was brutal, but in the end, Malgus was defeated. Rather than be captured, he set the station to self-destruct, going down in a fiery blaze. But, as we all know, if you don't see the death on screen, it's never really over. Malgus was presumed dead for nearly a decade, while the galaxy saw its fair share of chaos. The Republic and Empire sniped at each other, the Dread War was avoided, and the eternal empire of Zakuul rose and fell. Rumors swirled about Malgus' survival, and those whispers turned out to be true when he reappeared during the Third Galactic War. Out of nowhere, he surfaced as the Emperor's Wrath, the second in command to the Sith Empress Asina, while the Empire launched an invasion of Ossus. The galaxy was rocked by a devastating turn of events, and the Republic barely had a moment to breathe. The moment he set foot on Ossus, Malgus took control of the assault, leading the charge against the Jedi colony under Jedi Master Nas Jaral, forcing them into a desperate evacuation. But that was just the beginning. With Ossus behind him, Malgus turned his focus to Dantooine, a planet he considered a threat due to its strategic location bordering Sith space. It wasn't just a potential launch point for Republic attacks, it was a vital resupply hub for their Outer Rim operations. Malgus, ever the tactician, hired mercenaries to storm the planet, sending the Republic packing once again. But his real masterpiece was Corellia, where he set his sights on the Republic's Meridian Complex, a shipyard crucial to their victory. With Darth Krovos at his side, Malgus amassed a terrifying fleet and launched an all-out assault. Using the Republic's lack of fuel ships against them, he sent his forces to destroy their reinforcements at key locations, ensuring no help would arrive in time to save Corellia. Inside the Meridian Complex, Malgus clashed with Jedi and Republic sympathizers. until an explosion sent the station spiraling into chaos. The Republic's teams barely managed to escape, but Malgus was left injured. Riddled with pain and uncertainty, he boarded a medical ship, only to be struck by a terrifying vision that left him deeply shaken. In his desperate search for peace of mind, he ventured to the long-abandoned Jedi Enclave on Dantooine, hoping to find some sort of answer. It was there that he uncovered the legend of Darth Newell, an ancient Sith Lord whose dark knowledge might offer the solace he sought. His journey took him to the Temple of Newell on Elam, where a fierce battle between the Jedi and Sith over a powerful holocron had already begun. Malgus, ever the opportunist, intervened and emerged victorious, revealing his true intentions. He spoke of the Forgotten Ones, those discarded by both Jedi and Sith, and urged a young Padawan to join him in the hunt for her lost brother. After claiming the holocron, Malgus left her alive, leaving her to ponder his offer, but his victory was short-lived. A Republic strike force eventually took him down outside the temple, capturing him and locking him away aboard Carrick Station. Despite his captivity, Malgus remained unfazed, silently vowing that the Republic's troubles were far from over. His fire was only just beginning, and the galaxy would burn in the chaos he would unleash as he sought to purge it of the corrupt powers that had failed it. And then he said nothing more. In the vast galaxy of Star Wars, there's one Sith who stands head and shoulders above the rest. Darth Maul. You know the type. Towering, imposing, the kind of guy you'd avoid in a bar. But what makes Maul stand out? While most Sith were power-hungry, self-serving maniacs, Maul was cut from a different cloth. He wasn't just another Sith obsessed with domination. No, he had a bigger picture in mind, one that went beyond personal gain. Maul had this rare mix of duty, loyalty, and vision that set him apart from the usual selfish warriors and politicians of his kind. He wasn't just about chaos, he was about purpose. Today, we're diving into his career, his ideals, and how this absolute powerhouse found enlightenment in a place few Sith ever reach. From the true Sith Empire in 3702 BBY to becoming one of the most formidable Sith Lords in history, Darth Maul's legacy is far from ordinary. In the shadowy corners of history, the Sith Lord's rise to power remains shrouded in secrecy, with whispers only telling fragments of his past. Once a Sith warrior, he embraced the spiky armor and mask that became his signature. Legends say no one ever saw his face, and those who dared didn't live to tell. One of the most chilling tales involves Moff Xerxes, who failed to quell a rebellion on Sullust. After a summons to the Sith Lord's chambers and a tense dismissal, the Moff resigned and ended his own life. The rumor? That the Sith Lord removed his mask, a sight so horrifying that it drove the Moff to his tragic end. As a weapon, he wielded the legendary saber of Tulak Hord, discovered on the planet Droman Fells. By 3681 BBY, at the dawn of the Great Galactic War, he sat on the Dark Council, overseeing the Empire's defenses. His power only grew, participating in crucial operations, including the downfall of Lord Califo, and defending Korriban and Zyos from the Republic's attacks. His legend is one of terror, power, and relentless ambition. He was known as the Counselor with the Faceless Mask, a symbol of invincibility that no army could shatter. By the end of the Great Galactic War, only 7 council members remained alive, and Maul was one of them. As the Cold War began, Maul, now the unchallenged leader of the council, turned his focus to strengthening the Empire's defenses, preparing for the war that was sure to reignite. But his greatest challenge wasn't the growing tension with the Republic. No, it was managing the internal chaos of the Empire, its endless infighting and backstabbing, especially among the younger Sith. His rivals, Darth Barris and Darth Thanaton, were overthrown by their own apprentices, their power stolen, and their lives ended. The Battle of Corellia took its toll too, claiming 3 Dark Council members, including the heads of the spheres of military strategy and offense, leaving Maul with control over the entire Imperial army. Yet, despite his newfound power, Maul was stuck in a constant battle to hold together the fractured Empire leadership, all while dealing with squabbling council members. But it wasn't his rise to power that made Darth Maul legendary. What set him apart was his unwavering commitment to his duty and his perspective on life and death. Unlike the selfish Sith around him, Mar was driven by a vision far greater than himself. He had given everything to protect the Empire and its people, to ensure its future and prosperity. For him, nothing was off limits in this pursuit. To him, war was not just a fight, it was the crucible where society could evolve. The Empire, he believed, was on the brink of collapse, held back by centuries of petty squabbles and infighting. But under his rule, he sought to bring an end to these distractions, aiming for stability and growth. However, don't be fooled, he wasn't some soft-hearted leader. He was a Sith through and through, ruthless and unyielding. He didn't rely on random bursts of rage like others of his kind. No, his anger was a carefully controlled, simmering force, waiting only for the right moment to strike. But when that moment came, it was devastating. He valued competence above all else, punishing failure with brutal efficiency. As a leader, he demanded the same dedication from his subordinates, showing no mercy for those who faltered. In his eyes, failure and cowardice were unforgivable. But during the Cold War, something else was killing him, his connection to the dark side. His body slowly deteriorated, and his emotions drained away, leaving him a shell of what he once was. Death no longer fazed him. What truly set him apart was his outlook on life and duty, especially in the way he mentored his apprentice, a fierce warrior and cunning politician. Together, they made a perfect team, both understanding the bitter necessity of politics and strategy. She was not his pawn out of obligation, but because she recognized the precision with which he played the game, unlike the reckless Sith around them. During the Cold War, a crisis unfolded on Balmorra. The planet's governor was losing control, and Darth Mar wasn't about to let it slide. Without hesitation, he sent his apprentice to handle the mess, but not in the way one might think. Instead of just assigning her the mission, he took a moment to give a harsh lesson. He reminded her that the closer you are to death, the clearer your foresight becomes. To drive that point home, he fought her until she was nearly dead, forcing her to glimpse her own future through a Force vision. What did she see? Her own demise. Still, Mar wasn't done. He left her with a chilling final lesson. You cannot escape death. Only a coward runs from the inevitable. You are not a coward, my apprentice. And at my sod of thee. Those were his last words to his apprentice, and Locris understood enough to go willingly. Where every other Sith fought against their impending death, Mar embraced it as inevitable. This was, of course, in contrast to his very title. The title Darth was a perversion of the Rakatan, phrase Dar-Ta, which meant conqueror of death. He didn't let fear control him. Duty bound to serve and defend the Empire, he was the truest leader the Empire ever had. His ideals were what helped him find enlightenment in the end. As we mentioned earlier, Darth Mar was loyal only to the Empire. He held no personal feelings towards other people or institutions. What if he cared about was how useful they were, and if he judged them detrimental, they were discarded. That's why, when the Order of Revan attempted to resurrect the Sith Emperor on Yavin 4, Mar acted immediately to stop them. Vitiate, the former Sith Emperor, had proven his insanity many times over by this point. Allowing him to return and take control of the Empire would undo all the progress Mar had achieved. The Sith Lord struck with brutal force, cutting down several guards before the Emperor unleashed his devastating Force lightning, ending his life. But this wasn't the end for Darth Mar. Over 5 years later, when the Alliance united under the Outlander to battle Zakul arrived on Odessa, the former Outlander, now the Alliance commander, felt a strange, familiar presence while wandering through the planet's dense forest. It led them to a hidden camp where, to their surprise, they found both Satil Shan and Darth Mar. The Jedi Grandmaster, now in exile, and Mar, who had returned as a Force ghost, were deep in conversation. Mar confessed he had lingered due to guilt for abandoning the Empire in its time of need, a regret that had followed him even in death. In true Mar fashion, he acknowledged that his stubbornness during the Zakul conflict had led to his downfall. He didn't regret his death, but he deeply regretted turning his back on his people. This shared moment between them sparked years of discussions, with both learning from each other's philosophies on the Force, forging a bond that transcended life and death. In a dramatic twist, the Sith Lord, after killing several guards, was struck down by the Emperor's Force lightning. But that wasn't the end for Darth Maul. Years later, as the Alliance, led by the former Outlander now known as the Alliance Commander, made their way to Odessin, a familiar presence was sensed in the planet's forests. It was there, in a secluded camp, that the Commander found none other than Satele Shan and the Force ghost of Darth Maul. Maul, having lingered in the afterlife, sought Satele out for a deep philosophical conversation. He revealed his regret for abandoning the Empire, admitting that his stubbornness on Zakuul led to his death. Though he didn't regret dying, only leaving his people in their darkest hour. Together, Maul and Satele spent years learning from each other's philosophies, forging an unexpected bond amidst their shared knowledge of the Force. The Zakuulan Force users were unlike any Jedi or Sith. They didn't worship the extremes of light or dark. Instead, they walked a razor-thin line in between. Their secret? Power didn't come from one side alone, it thrived in the balance. Two legendary warriors hoped to pass this knowledge on to the Commander, believing it was the key to defeating Vitiate. But here's the twist. The so-called balance they spoke of, it wasn't exactly what it seemed. The Zakuulans were deeply immersed in the dark side, not the light. What one of the warriors, Maul, truly meant was that he had come to understand the light's strength, especially in his final words. In life, I dismissed the Jedi Code. I was wrong. There is no death. There is only the Force, and it has a plan. Sure, they spoke of balance, but let's be real, there's no true harmony between dark and light.